Hello, and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with the headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I am Tian Yu. Coming up in this edition, Ukraine has declared a day of mourning after more than 40 people were killed and over 100 others injured from missile attacks across the country. Israel has launched a new round of offensives in Gaza, while intelligence chiefs from Egypt, the United States, and Israel are set to meet in Doha. And Storm Beryl has killed at least 8 people in southern United States. We start with latest developments of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Ukraine declared a day of mourning on Tuesday after more than 40 people were killed and over 100 others injured from missile attacks across the country. In Kyiv, UN officials say a children's hospital took a direct hit from a cruise missile. Moscow has denied it targeted civilian facilities. Megumi Lim has more from Kyiv.
Search and rescue operations at the Augmented Children's Hospital in Kyiv ended on Tuesday afternoon, but the work to clear the rubble is still ongoing. Not only by emergency workers, but also volunteers, including priests. Russia says a Ukrainian air defense missile hit the hospital, but UN officials disputed this after analyzing the site and footage of the attacks.
Analysis of the video footage and assessment made at the incident site indicates a high likelihood that the children's hospital suffered a direct hit.
Blast debris also fell on patients undergoing open-heart surgery, according to officials. Ina, a nurse, was looking for medical equipment that could be salvaged. She was injured during the airstrike.
We were on our way to take the children outside. I came back to get something, but the glass shattered and I fell.
2 people were killed at the hospital, including a doctor, and some 50 people were injured. Among the victims were some of Ukraine's sickest children. The hospital director estimates the damages to cost up to $2.5 million. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has vowed retaliation, and he has renewed calls for more air defense systems. A decision, he says, that needs to be made as soon as possible.
That was Megumi Lim reporting from Kyiv. In the Middle East, at least 3 people are dead and several others are wounded after Israeli forces struck a house in central Gaza on Tuesday. Many are still missing and believed to be trapped under the rubble. Another Israeli airstrike in the southern Gaza Strip killed more than 24 people, while advancing tanks in Gaza City forced residents to flee under fire. Hamas is warning that the increased bombardments could jeopardize fragile truce talks. Akram al-Satari is on the ground in Gaza.
Well, the strikes that have been continuous for the last few days have already taken hundreds of lives. At least in the last 12 hours, around 32 Palestinians were killed. 19 of them were killed in Al-Burej in Gaza central area. 9 others were killed in one incident in An-Nusayrat in central Gaza. 4 others were killed in An-Nusayrat in another incident. 2 others were killed in Deir al-Balah area in Gaza refugee, in central area of Gaza refugee camp, in Deir al-Balah refugee camp, and some other people were killed in Rafah and also in Ash-Shaja'iyya, Al-Zaytun, Ad-Daraj, Al-Sabra. So the massive bombardment that has been taking place and the ever-increasing military pressure entailing moving the people from their areas, from their homes into the unknown and asking them to stay in the recognized shelters as described by the Israeli forces has left them vulnerable and has left them with no much of an option, while the warfare continues to take their life, destroy their homes, and to leave them in a great deal of despair and fear of the future that might also come with things that they don't favor or they don't expect because of the ongoing surprises by the Israeli occupation. As for the famine in the Gaza Strip, or as for the starvation that people of Gaza have been facing for the last 9 months, according to the government media office, a special release was made, and in that special release they were highlighting the fact that Gaza has not received any humanitarian aid trucks for the last 64 days. And according to the UNRWA as well, since early May, no humanitarian aid is entering Gaza, and that leaves the people leaves them exhausting all coping mechanisms, the positive one, the negative one, and leave them with no option whatsoever.
That was Akram al-Satari reporting from the Gaza Strip. Efforts to reach a truce in the Gaza Strip continue, with the intelligence chiefs of Egypt, the United States, and Israel to meet in Doha. This follows 2 days of ceasefire negotiations in Cairo. Jonathan Regev has more from Tel Aviv.
According to those reports and things that we've heard throughout the day coming out of Egypt and out of Israel, progress has been made for the past few days. The head of the Shabak, the Internal Security Agency, Ronen Bar, was in Egypt for the past few days negotiating. He came back to Israel. And how important is that meeting in Doha? At least on behalf of Israel, we know that it's important because both Ronen Bar, which we mentioned, and the head of the Mossad, the Israeli Secret Service, Dedi Barnea, will also, both of them will be traveling to Doha. So Israel is putting a lot of emphasis, a lot of importance in these talks. And the headlines, once again, are portraying a positive image, an optimistic image, but one that says that it's still no time to congratulate anyone for anything. There's still work to be done. And having said all that, we have been in such places before and eventually nothing happened. There have been instances in which there were negotiations and both sides were expressing optimism, and eventually it did not happen. Therefore, until we see a signed deal, that's going to take at least a few more days. Until we get to that point, there's still plenty of work to do. We know that there's still demands by Hamas, which Israel finds unacceptable. There's still demands by Israel, which Hamas finds unacceptable. So bridging those differences is still a difficult work to do. There's still plenty of work to be done, but clearly optimism being portrayed here in Israel, and not only in Israel, as we've heard, in Egypt as well.
That was Jonathan Regev reporting on the mediation efforts to reach a ceasefire in Gaza. Turning to the Americas, at least 8 people have died in the southern United States after Storm Beryl made landfall on Monday. The storm was downgraded on Tuesday to a post-tropical cyclone. Beryl damaged electricity grids in Texas, leaving over 2 million homes without power as temperatures are forecast to hit 41 degrees Celsius. Tony Waterman reports from Austin, Texas.
It is excruciatingly hot in Texas right now, and when you think about millions of people without electricity in the middle of a Texas summer, it sets up a potentially deadly situation. Now, CenterPoint Energy, which is the main utility provider in Houston, says that it has mobilized more than 11,000 workers from across the country to come to Texas to fix this problem, and that they are aiming to restore power to 1 million customers by the end of Wednesday. But that still means there's the potential for hundreds of thousands, if not more, people to be without power for many more days to come. And they did say that in the hardest hit areas, people may experience extended outages in these sweltering temperatures. And in Galveston, city officials are saying it could take up to 2 weeks before the power is fully restored. This really is a dangerous situation. You think about people out in their yards trying to pick up the storm debris. Maybe they've lost parts of their homes in this storm, and they really have no place to cool off, because this isn't just about not having air conditioning. When you do not have electricity, you can't run fans, you can't keep your food cold, you can't cook anything. If you have an electric stove, you can't plug in your devices. So this really is a dangerous situation when we're talking about temperatures in the high 30s into the 40s when you take into consideration the heat index. Now, the lieutenant governor of Texas, Dan Patrick, said that he spoke with President Biden on Tuesday, asking for a federal disaster declaration, which the president granted. This will help cover the cost of some of the cleanup and the recovery. And at a White House press conference, the press secretary is saying that the president is staying on top of this and that he wants to make sure that aid is sent to Texas. Biden is actually going to be in Austin next Monday for a pre-scheduled event. His office hasn't said anything about making a side trip to Houston, but it doesn't seem completely out of the realm of possibility when you think about the devastation that the city is facing right now.
That was Tony Waterman reporting the storm in Texas. A growing number of foreign tourists are returning to Venezuela, which has struggled for years under U.S. sanctions. The recovery of the tourism industry increases incomes, creates jobs, and boosts public confidence in the future. Lei Xiangping has more.
Venezuela's tourism industry is growing rapidly again as the country's economy recovers and relations with neighboring countries improve. The number of inbound international flights has gradually picked up. Foreign tourists are back at the landmark Bolivar Square in Caracas.
Venezuela has a good climate. This is our second time to travel here. Overall, we are very satisfied with Margarita Island. I like to travel to Venezuela because the people here are friendly and the food is delicious. I like the culture and beaches here. I visited Margarita Island, Coach Island, and the capital Caracas.
Tourism has been one of the industries hit the hardest by U.S. sanctions. In 2021, Venezuela received just over 290,000 international tourists, less than one-third of that in 2013. Tourism Minister Ali Padron says the impact of U.S. sanctions is multifaceted.
Some countries have issued warnings for traveling to Venezuela, which has increased the price of insurance and air tickets for visiting Venezuela. Some international airlines have also stopped flights to the country. In addition, sanctions have led to a lack of payment channels for international tourists. Coupled with negative reports on Venezuela by some international media, these factors have led to a significant decline in the number of tourists traveling to the country.
To cope with the impacts, the Venezuelan government has invested more in infrastructure, increased reception capabilities, and reached cooperation deals with countries including Russia, Poland, and Cuba. Things started to change in 2022. The number of inbound tourists hit 1.25 million last year. The recovery of the tourism industry has helped stabilize employment. Reynaldo Mijares' travel agency helps foreign tourists experience local culture and lifestyle. It now has 48 employees and can earn $15 from serving each tourist.
Our tourist routes provide visitors with the opportunity to experience our unique culture, food, and music. We believe that tourism will continue to create jobs and encourage community residents and small-scale business owners to improve their services.
Mijares is confident in the future of the tourism sector, which has become one of the 18 oil alternative industries amid the decline of oil export revenues caused by U.S. sanctions. It is estimated that Venezuela's tourism industry will further recover this year, with tourist arrivals expected to exceed 1.6 million, up 25% from a year ago.
That was Lei Xiangping reporting from Caracas, Venezuela. Finally, in Asia, a report shows that China's Huangyandao area in the South China Sea enjoys excellent environmental quality and healthy coral reef ecosystem. The Environment Ministry jointly released the report with the Chinese Academy of Sciences and Guangxi University. The findings are based on an on-site investigation conducted in May and June. Sun Tianyuan reports.
The Chinese scientists say the results of the latest investigation of waters near Huangyan Island show that the environment had an excellent health. Over 600 samples were collected for assessment. Experts say the concentration of the pollutants such as heavy metals and waters was below the standard limits compared to previous records. There was no sign of cyanide detected in the fish samples collected. So that basically rules out the use of the toxic chemical for fishing and the area. However, Chinese marine ecologists did warn against potential illegal fishing activities and call for further global efforts to maintain the current healthy status. The report also shows that the weight density of floating litter in the area was relatively low compared to similar offshore areas worldwide. Offsetis, the coral reefs ecosystem, was another major area for research. The probe recorded over 100 coral species in waters near Huangyan Island, marking the highest coral diversity ever documented. The average coverage of a live coral exceeds 28%, with a significant increase compared to that of 2015. Generally, the researchers believe that global warming is a major reason behind the rapid degradation of coral reefs on a global scale. The latest probe in the area, however, shows that coral communities at the Huangyan Island demonstrate strong heat resistance amid rising sea surface temperatures. Experts say that makes the island a good habitat for corals and other marine species, but they still warn that the coral reef's ecosystem might experience higher degree of heat stress this summer as compared to previous years.
That was Sun Tianyuan reporting. Recapping today's headlines. Ukraine has declared a day of mourning after more than 40 people were killed and over 100 others injured from missile attacks across the country. Israel has launched a new round of offensives in Gaza, while intelligence chiefs from Egypt, the United States, and Israel are set to meet in Doha. And Storm Beryl has killed at least 8 people in southern United States. And that's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports, and culture, you can subscribe to The Beijing Hour, a 1-hour podcast news magazine program. We welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Tianyu. Thank you for listening.